In 2005, Avatar: The Last Airbender took the world by storm, easily becoming one of the best shows in the 2000s. Not only was the viewership incredibly diverse, the show expanded into other mediums like comic books and video games, but along with creating a cult-like following, it also created some other questionable things. But the main question that arose is this considered anime? I mean, if it looks like a duck, swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, then it's probably a duck, right? Watching TV as a kid, I would have probably put this and the shows on Toonami in the same category. So really, what's the big difference between a show like this and a Japanese-made show like Naruto? Well, I'm here to answer that question, but in order to properly answer this, we need to take a closer look and explain some of the history of Japanese animation. Back in the earlier 20th century, Japanese filmmakers were experimenting with finding and perfecting the different kinds of techniques of animation. The earliest known animation that came out of Japan was Katsuro Shashin, a 3-second clip of a boy writing on a wall. Some say the piece can date back to around 1907, but no one knows for sure because it was undated and made by an unknown creator. A lot of animations in the early 1900s were made using the cutout technique, which is when animators would cut out small objects and then move them around bit by bit, which was the cheapest method. Animation in Japan was going great. However, there was a major setback in 1923 when an earthquake hit the Kanto plain, and by it doing so, killed tens of thousands of people and destroyed most of these early animations, a lot of which were never found again. By the time the 1940s hit, anime was already well established in Japan and in full stride, with feature full-length animated films like Momotero's Divine Sea Warriors. However, it wasn't until the 60s until we'd see the first televised anime. The first anime to do that was Three Tales, which is pretty much what it sounds like, a 30-minute animation that tells you 3 stories. It was around this time that they started to adapt certain manga into anime, which gave way to an anime renaissance that gave us some of the best animes of all time. In the late 60s and into the golden age in the 80s, shows like Astro Boy, Mobile Suit Gundam, and many shows that followed into the 90s and 2000s, like Cowboy Bebop, Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon, and Naruto, and many more. So this brings us up to date. And what did we learn? Well, for one, anime has no definitive art style. A show like Panty and Stocking that is very similar to American animation can be considered anime, but a show like Teen Titans with a very Japanese influenced animation and music cannot. The big difference between the two is where they were produced. An animation can only be considered anime when it's produced in Japan, right? Well, for the most part, yes, but there have been exceptions to this rule. Kinda. Take The Big O for example. After its low rating in Japan, they decided to cut its 26 episode run down to only 13. But here comes Cartoon Network, who saw it was being well received in America. So not only did they fund the second season, they also co-produced it alongside with Sunrise and Bandai Visual. But does this second season count as an anime because it was co-produced with an American company? What if it was the opposite situation where an American show was co-produced with a Japanese company? Where do you draw the line? Well, here's the thing. To the people of Japan, the word anime doesn't mean the same thing to Americans. In Japan, the word anime is just a shortening of the word animation. That does not mean specifically Japanese animation. The term is a blanket statement for any kind of animation anywhere. SpongeBob, The Simpsons, but no, not Cory in the House. But in America, anime is specific to animation from Japan. So, going back to the question that I asked at the beginning, what's the difference between Avatar and Naruto? Well, the answer to this question really depends on where you live. If you're living in Japan, you would probably use the original definition of anime and say that they both fall into this category. But if you live in America, you would say that one is anime and one isn't. Just know, whichever meaning you choose, there will be someone who thinks otherwise and is ready to fight you over the internet about it.
Everything flows, and all is connected. This eye is not merely seeing reality, it is touching the truth.